Have you ever had that moment when you needed to borrow money from friends or family and felt that burning shame inside? Like you're there at a barbecue, everyone laughing, drinking beer, and you have to pull someone aside and say, "Hey man, can you lend me 50 euros until the end of the month?" And then comes the look, that look of pity mixed with judgment that makes you want to crawl into a hole and disappear. Yeah, I've been there. And I bet you've been there too, or you know someone who has. But here's the crazy part. The story I'm about to tell you today is not about someone who borrowed 50 euros and stayed broke. It's about someone who borrowed 50 euros while secretly building an empire. And on the day his family was about to be evicted from the house they'd lived in for 15 years, he showed up with the deed. Yes, he bought the house, the entire house. And everyone who laughed at him? Well, they're not laughing anymore. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about why people who look broke are sometimes the richest, and why people who look rich are often just one paycheck away from total financial collapse. If you judge someone's financial situation by the clothes they wear, the car they drive, or the house they live in, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and leave a like if this video helps you understand that real wealth is completely invisible. Because look, the story I'm about to tell is based on real cases I've studied, and it's going to flip everything you think about money upside down. Let's start with Marco. Fictitious name, but absolutely real story in its core elements. Marco was 28 years old and lived with his parents and younger sister in a rented house on the outskirts of Lisbon. He worked as an administrative assistant, earning around 1,200 euros a month. He wore the same 3 shirts on rotation every week. He biked to work. He brought lunch from home. And when he went out with friends, which was rare, he always borrowed money. 10 euros here, 20 euros there. Once, he borrowed 50 euros from a cousin because he said he was short that month. His friends laughed, not cruelly, but with that pity laugh. Poor Marco, he'll never get ahead. Meanwhile, those same friends were financing cars with 450 monthly payments, paying 800 euros rent for Instagrammable apartments, spending 200 euros every weekend on bars and restaurants, buying a new iPhone every year on 24-month installments. Here's the thing. There's a fascinating 2019 study from Stanford University that tracked 10,000 people over 20 years. Want to know what they found? People who appeared wealthy at 30 had, on average, a negative net worth of negative 15,000 euros. Meanwhile, people who lived below their means had an average positive net worth of 47,000 euros. Let me repeat that. Negative 15,000 euros versus positive 47,000 euros. That means the successful-looking people owed more than they owned. They were poorer than someone who literally had nothing. Now you might be thinking, okay, Nick, but Marco was borrowing money. Clearly he was broke, right? Wrong. This is where it gets really interesting. Marco was doing something I call strategic financial invisibility. He wasn't hiding wealth out of shame. He was hiding intention. Marco earned 1,200 euros a month, but his expenses, living with his parents, 0 rent, bike to work, 0 transportation, packed lunch, about 60 euros per month on food, no streaming subscriptions, gym, or other modern necessities, clothes, 1 new shirt every 6 months. Total monthly expenses, about 150 euros. That means Marco was saving 1,050 euros every single month, without fail. But Nick, what about the 50 euros he borrowed? Here's what most people don't understand about money. Liquidity is not the same as wealth. Marco had money, a lot of money, but that money was working for him, not sitting in a checking account. He had invested every euro he saved over 5 years into low-cost index funds and real estate ETFs. When he needed 50 euros, he technically had over 60,000 euros invested. But he refused, and this is crucial, he refused to sell investments for daily expenses because he understood something fundamental. Every euro you take out of your investments isn't just 1 euro.
It's that euro plus all the compound interest it would generate over the next 30, 40, 50 years. A 2022 Credit Suisse study showed that 1,000 euros invested at age 25 with a 7% annual return becomes 14,974 euros by age 65. If you pull that money out at 30, you didn't lose 1,000 euros, you lost almost 15,000 of your future. Marco understood this viscerally, so he preferred borrowing 50 euros and paying it back in 2 weeks rather than sabotaging his future. But there was something deeper happening here, something psychological that separates people who build real wealth from people who just look rich. There's a concept in behavioral economics called delayed gratification, famously tested in Stanford's marshmallow experiment. Kids who could wait 15 minutes to get 2 marshmallows instead of 1 had, on average, more success in adulthood. But here's the part no one tells you. Delayed gratification isn't just about waiting, it's about rewiring what gives you pleasure. Marco wasn't suffering. He didn't wake up every day thinking, "I hate not having a car." No, he had trained his brain to feel pleasure watching his investment account grow. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman explains this perfectly. Your dopamine reward system can be trained. You can literally teach your brain to release dopamine when you save money, just like other people get dopamine when they spend. Marco checked his investment accounts every Friday night. Sometimes he saw 200 euro gains, sometimes 800 euros in a good week, and that gave him the same pleasure his friends got from buying new clothes or going out to dinner. That mindset shift is everything, and that's why most people never become wealthy. They can't feel pleasure in accumulation, only in consumption. Now we get to the part of the story that sounds like a movie script, but I swear it happened, with some details changed to protect identities. After 5 years of saving 1,050 euros per month, Marco had accumulated about 63,000 euros in investments. With the market averaging around 7% annually, that grew to about 75,000 euros. But here's the key detail. Marco's family had been renting the same house for 15 years. It was old, needed repairs, and was in a neighborhood starting to gentrify. The landlord was an elderly man who had been fair. Then he passed away. His children inherited the property and saw opportunity. They could renovate and triple the rent or sell. They gave notice, 60 days to leave. Marco's family panicked. His father, a mechanic, had no savings. His mother was a homemaker. His sister was in university. They were looking at rents of 900 to 1,100 euros in the area, impossible on their income. Everyone was desperate, except Marco, because Marco had spent the last 6 months quietly negotiating with the heirs. The house was valued at 180,000 euros and needed 30,000 euros in renovations. The heirs wanted a quick sale. Marco offered 165,000 euros cash equivalent, closing in 30 days. You're probably thinking, wait, Nick, Marco had 75,000 euros. How did he buy a 165,000 euro house? Great question. Here's where it gets brilliant. Marco did 3 things. He used his 75,000 euros as a 45% down payment, enormous by European standards. With that down payment and stable employment, he secured a 90,000 euro mortgage at 2.8% interest, excellent for 2023. He showed the bank a plan: live in the house with his family and rent out the basement with a separate entrance for 400 euros a month. Let's do the math. 90,000 euros mortgage at 2.8% over 20 years, approximately 475 euros a month. Basement rental income, 400 euros. Real cost, 75 euros. Previous rent, 650 euros. Marco didn't just buy the house, he reduced his family's monthly expenses by 575 euros. September 15th, eviction day. Boxes everywhere. His mother crying. His father silent. That heavy silence of a man who feels he failed his family. His sister comforting their mother. Then Marco arrives with a folder. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk." He opens the folder. Inside, the deed. The house was in his name. I bought the house. It's ours. No one is being evicted. Silence. Then his mother collapses, not in sadness, but relief, that cry you make when a 1,000-kilo weight is finally lifted off your chest. His father? He hugged Marco and cried, a 60-year-old man who worked his whole life with his hands, who never managed to buy a home, crying in his son's arms. The most revealing part isn't that Marco bought the house, it's what happened after people found out. The friends who laughed, the cousin who joked. When the news spread, because it always does, the reaction was complicated. Some were genuinely happy. Most were uncomfortable. Because Marco's success forced them to confront their own financial choices. There's a psychological phenomenon called cognitive dissonance, when you hold two conflicting beliefs and your brain short-circuits.
They believed, I'm financially successful. Marco is a financial failure. But Marco bought a house at 28, and they, renting, credit card debt, car loans, zero net worth. The dissonance was unbearable. So instead of learning, they rationalized. He got lucky. His parents must have helped. What kind of life is that, living with parents at 28? I'd rather enjoy my youth. A 2021 Northwestern University study found that 67% of people feel resentment or denial before admiration when someone in their social circle achieves unexpected financial success, because admitting Marco was right means admitting they were wrong, and that's too painful for most people. You might be thinking, cool story, Nick, but I don't live with my parents. I can't save 1,050 euros a month. It doesn't matter. This story isn't about numbers, it's about principles. Lesson 1. Financial invisibility is power. Stop signaling wealth you don't have. Lesson 2. Liquidity versus wealth. Cash is not wealth. Growing assets are. Lesson 3. Reprogram your dopamine. Train your brain to enjoy saving, not spending. Lesson 4. Strategic sacrifice. Cut where it matters least. Protect what matters most. Lesson 5. Think in decades, not months. Marco borrowed 50 euros and people laughed. 5 years later, he bought the house that saved his family. And the people who laughed? They're still paying rent. Here's the brutal truth. Wealth is a choice. Not always. Some people face impossible situations. I acknowledge that. But if you're watching this on YouTube, you probably have choices. Marco made them every day for 5 years and changed his family's life forever. The question isn't, can I do what Marco did? The question is, what am I willing to sacrifice today for freedom tomorrow? If this video changed how you think about money, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what's one thing you'll cut today to invest in your future. See you in the next video.